This is The Recursive Radicalism of Nick Fuentes, written and read by Abe Zucca. This is part 7. Synthetic Candidate, the Escalation Spiral, and the False Victory. He is a political artifact, something grown in a lab. Sometimes when you win, you actually lose. The culture only swung right when the left finally held power. A window of opportunity always hides a second window, the one you get thrown out of. Every era produces a candidate who is less a person than an engineered surface, an artifact, reverse fabricated from polling data, donor anxieties, psychological operations, and the bureaucratic pheromones entitled, bureaucratic pheromones emitted. Such a candidate exists not to win elections, but to absorb insurgent energies into the architecture of the regime. The synthetic candidate is recognizable by his negative charisma, which is not a flaw but a feature. Charisma threatens institutional power, but vacuum charisma invites projection, managerial insulation, and the plausible deniability of a vessel who can be rinsed and refilled as needed. When Trump functioned as a disruptive myth, a gaudy radioactive meteor whose entry fractured all narrative crusts, the synthetic candidate is the anti-myth, a temperate, beige isotrope designed to restabilize the epistemic field by absorbing the surplus voltage of populist expectation. Conversion narratives built around such figures, from never-Trumpers to MAGA apostle, operate as symbolic transubstantiations, not proof of sincerity, but rituals by which institutions launder their operative into plausible insurgent avatars. Political machines adore converts because they can be refitted in real time. True believers have to be betrayed, but converts already know betrayal intimately. The vice presidency is the liminal chamber of American mythopoesis, an empty throne built to incubate a successor who is not chosen by the people but selected by network elites as adhere to an architecture not in movement. Thus, a synthetic candidate in the vice chair is not a next in line, but a stabilizer block inserted into the narrative circuit to absorb panic, channel energy, and preserve continuity of managerial logic after a charismatic rupture. Every movement faces the moment when its victory becomes indistinguishable from its defeat. When the triumph of the champion dilutes the potency of the myth. When the God King returns to the throne only to reveal the throne has been hollowed out. Culture swings right only when the left governs, because power generates overreach, and overreach generates disgust, and disgust generates countermyth. Thus, the loss of the 2020 created more insurgent vitality than a second Trump term ever could. Winning too soon collapses the sacred tension that nourishes dissident identity. Losing paradoxically radicalizes the imagination and opens new narrative corridors into which forbidden strategies incubate. A strategic loss can amplify insurgent media, decentralize charisma, force algorithmic platforms to reveal their infrastructure, and produce a counter-elite more resilient than any cultivated under victory's decadent shadow. No movement survives the substitution of myth with management. When a figure like Vance is placed atop an insurgent tradition, The gesture is not continuation, but dissolution. The final proof that the machine has regained sovereignty over the fire Prometheus has stolen. The escalation spiral now unfolding: raids, street violence, administrative militarization, the open taunting of protesters by police, is not a breakdown, but the system's recalibration, a way of hardening the membrane before the next succession crisis. If a Republican administration antagonizes the left without neutralizing its institutional weaponry, the result is not victory, but deferred catastrophe. Those who inherit power after a partial purge are always more vengeful than those displaced without a fight. Thus arises the final paradox of the false victory. A movement may win an election only to lose the cycle, may capture the state only to strengthen the enemy's will, may celebrate a window of opportunity only to discover it was the aperture of a trap door into the second act, where unfinished battles return with apocalyptic ferocity. The organized minority, the power network, and the business theurgy of empires. It's not a conspiracy of a race, it's a network of interests. Institutions are self-perpetuating organisms with appetites. Sometimes an empire is ruled not by ideology, but by invoices. The donor shapes the doctrine retroactively sanctifies the donor. The network, a sovereign organism. Every modern power structure is less a cabal than an ecosystem, a dense lattice of donors, think tanks, media organs, managerial elites, cultural entrepreneurs, and the state functionaries who reinforce one another not through secret meetings, but through shared incentives, shared risk profiles, and shared fears of institutional collapse. In such ecosystems, individuals matter far less than the currents they are embedded in. A Bush or a Cheney become a nodal point not because of essence, but because the network's invisible metabolism flows through them, crystallizing temporary avatars of long-standing institutional appetites. Ideology in these structures is retroactive. First comes the business model, and then comes the theology to rationalize it. The think tank is the shrine in which financial patronage is converted into moral duty. The uncanny durability of certain policy preferences, forever wars, forever subsidies, forever strategic commitments, is not evidence of ethnic conspiracy, but of the market logic operating beneath ideology. The war machine must feed, and so it breeds doctrines as a coral reef breeds living stone. Power is not a pyramid, but a thicket, a dense mesh where identity is secondary to function, where what matters most is not who you are, but which contracts you can guarantee, which narratives you can launder, and which crisis you can monetize. This does not erase the reality of organized minorities within the apparatus. Every empire produces hyper-organized sub-elites whose cultural cohesion grants them leverage disproportionate to numbers. But the crucial fact is that the empire selects and nourishes these groups because they fit the imperial pattern, not because they invented it. An organized minority becomes powerful not by occult influence, but by providing services the ruling elite craves: fundraising, infrastructure, media discipline, ideological coherence, social cohesion, and the ability to mobilize capital and legitimacy across borders. Once an organized minority fuses with business interests, its influence becomes structural rather than conspiratorial. The question ceases to be who is pulling the strings and becomes why are the strings arranged to pull in this direction. The United States, as an imperial financial machine, has always elevated groups capable of operating transnationally. The globalized economy demands intermediaries who can translate between states, markets, and myth. Those who do so become indispensable and therefore untouchable. Thus, The true sovereign of the modern empire is not a people, but an alignment, capital circuits, bureaucratic incentives, geopolitical commitments, philanthropic projects, and media narratives that reinforce one another until dissent becomes not merely forbidden, but unintelligible. That's the end of part 7. Check out my gallery at zuccagallery.com, my artwork. Google the name Abe Zucca. I'll see you guys later.